everybody, it's me, Julieann Hartman with The Journey, and today is going to be amazing. We've got a very special guest on. Her name is Tina Konkin. Thank you so much, Tina, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Joanne.
You're welcome. And this is going to be a pretty, an amazing story, a crazy story. But what I love is that, normally this is about healing, sickness and all that. But since Butch and I have started our marriage teaching on Wednesday nights called Heartbeat, we really have had a lot of people talk to us about, hey, do you have any journeys that we can talk about marriage? And so look what happened. So now we're going to talk to Tina about it. And she's got some answers for you, and she has a testimony that I want you to hear right now. So let's get into it. So Tina, first of all, thank you so much because, I know that you've had many interviews, you've written books and all that stuff. You have a program for marriage. But still, no matter what, it means so much to me that you would come on the show and to talk about it, because we've got a whole viewership maybe that has never heard of you. And we want to free people of, whatever situations that they're in due to marriage and every other hurt in their heart from other things as well. So what I'd like to do is start from the beginning, like, who are you? And were you raised a Christian? When did you come into the kingdom?
Well, thanks for having me again. It is an honor. Anytime I get to speak of healing in the heart matters, it's an honor and it's a privilege. And if only one person hears this message and finds hope, for me, that's purpose fulfilled.
Yeah.
So, okay, where did I come from? Well, I came from Belgium, actually. I was born in Belgium, and we immigrated to Canada when I was 8 years old. Yes, my parents found the Lord. They were staunch Catholics when I was 5 years old. So that's all I've known is really the Christian faith. We still, they still keep some Christmas Catholic traditions, but that's all I know about that part of their history. But my history really was, in the church. And unlike a lot of people, church was a safe place for me. And I say unlike a lot of people because I do work with broken people. And I do work with people with relationship crisis and problems. And quite often we also look at, just like the question you just asked me, what about your faith? Where does that all come in? And that's where I learned, man, there's a lot of spiritual damage out there. And for me, that wasn't the case. So I do want to touch a little bit on that, but for my upbringing, I gotta say, church was safe. Church was where I was accepted, not in the outside world. My personal family was quite dysfunctional. And though I had both parents, my mom was a heavy duty disciplinarian and very religious in, spare the rod, spoil the child, that kind of thing. And very legalistic. But I got to tell you, Julieann, the amazing part is when you meet the Lord, doesn't matter what age you are, the God that you meet is the one that stays with you, I feel. And if you meet him as a stern, ready with, that stick, which is what sort of I heard at church, he's waiting for you to mess up. But that's not the Jesus I met when I was 5. The Jesus I met, the very first Bible story I ever heard was when his disciples got in trouble for shooing the kids away. Well, that by the age of 5, I already knew that kids should be seen and not heard. So for me, for an adult to stand up for children that were running around making noise was like the most amazing thing. And I think because that was my first encounter with his love for kids, that's what stuck with me. It didn't seem to matter what else went on around me. But having said that, church really was a safe place for me until, and I thank God I can say until, because when it wasn't a safe place, I was already very, very mature in my faith. And when it became an unsafe faith, unsafe place, is when the reveal of my husband having an affair came in. And we were in ministry at the time, and with the church, we played a big part in the church. So when that all came out, that is the first time I experienced rejection in the church, the first time I experienced harsh counsel, and just not grace, which is what I needed at the time.
Okay, so wait, so let's
Yeah.
just unloaded a lot. All right. So you were raised in the church, and then you met your husband. How many years were you married?
We were married 32 years.
32 years.
But he passed away at 32 years. Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
So,
Okay. So,
yeah.
all right. So you married your husband. How many kids do you have?
I have 3 children.
Okay.
2 I have that are adults. 1 now is just turned 18, so just going into adulthood. And she's a miracle child because she came post-affair. And so we adopted her at 3 months. So that's a whole story in itself. But I have 3 kids, 3 grandkids. And yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, beautiful.
Okay. So, all right. So you guys are married. And you are in Canada. This is where you're raising your kids?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So everything as far as you're concerned is going well.
Yes. In our marriage, in our ministry, you know, I mean.
What was your ministry?
Working with couples, we were couples counselors.
Okay.
That should add a bit of a twist to it all.
Yes. So, all right. So everything is going well. Did you ever notice anything that was not right, weird? Anybody make a comment? Anybody, nothing?
No, not until the actual thing happened. And it was short-lived. So there wasn't a whole lot of time. But I do want to frame it that what was different in our marriage at that time is his mom was dying. So that year, his mom was dying. And something you should know about me is that, and that'll come out in the story more in the emotional side of things, I'm not a nurturer. And, my love language is not touch and feely, all that. But there's a reason for that. And I think sometimes, what I believe now is that unless people are willing to look at their own background, how they were raised, what they saw, heard, and experienced, you bring that into your relationships, unbeknown even to both of you, right? So I had a reaction that I'd never had. I was never a nurturer, don't get me wrong. But he never seemed to need it. He was the nurturer. If the kids needed comforting, he was the comforter, and he was never used to me being nurturing to him. I wasn't frigid in any way. I just wasn't out there with it, and I would never notice if he had emotional needs. I would never notice that, but he also didn't seem to have any. But that was
find that a little bit more. Now, are you saying that you wouldn't go up to him and hug him? Was it that kind of nurturing? Was it like, what exactly was it with your words?
It was things like, later when the Lord started showing me in our healing process, it was things like, we worked from home. So our home office was at home. So I would, be coffee break. Now you got to imagine my husband is the nurturer. So every morning he brought me coffee in bed. He made the first cup of coffee. But, if I got, I get very, I don't know about you, but I can't sit for very long. So we'd be working and doing things, and then I'd have to get up. And so I'd go make that mid-morning coffee. Well, I'd go up there, make it, pour myself a cup, go down to the home office, and I didn't get him a cup. And he goes, "Hey, I wouldn't have minded a cup." And I said, "Oh, it's right there. It's all made. Just go up and get yourself a cup." I did that on autopilot. Did not know, didn't even think. I wonder if Ron wants a cup of coffee. It's little things like that, but it wasn't a big deal, not to me, not to him, or so it seemed, right?
Right.
So when the whole affair happened was in a very vulnerable, needy time of his life. He was the baby of the family and he wasn't dealing, and I could tell, and he wasn't the normal Ron, you know, and so, you know, I'd say, hey, his mom and dad lived 8 hours away, 8-hour drive. And so I'd say things like, you know, Ron, you really should go visit. Your sister called again and your mom's getting worse. And he'd go, yeah, yeah, yeah. And he wouldn't do it. So finally, one day I remember coming in and just saying, look, this is an obligation. She's your mother. So I was barking out orders instead of having that nurture. Hey, are you okay? And then one step further, I remember saying to him, I said, you know, you need to go talk to somebody. Maybe you should talk to so-and-so, which was my close friend, because she'd experienced the death of her parents. I'd not experienced family death. All right. So I just said, maybe you ought to talk to her. Maybe this is normal, but it's not for me. This is not normal that you're not visiting your mom as much as possible. Right. So it was things like that. So I basically threw him into her arms at the most vulnerable time. Now she was vulnerable too, because it brought back the death of her parents. So she could relate to exactly how he was feeling, but I was oblivious to all that.
Oh, wow. All right. So,
No.
his
And
mom,
so were they. So were they. They were just comforting each other. And, you know, it's like it's like I now looking back and realizing how my husband changed in ministry, his big rule of thumb when he counseled men was if it feels good, you've already crossed the line. So if a woman gives you a compliment, or if you're a woman and a man gives you a compliment, even if it's innocent and you want more of it or it feels good, you're already crossing the threshold or you're about to go into a trance.
so did you guys, I mean, your marriage, so at what year did this happen?
This happened, we'd been married about 15 years.
Okay.
So
So
14, 15 years.
did you guys argue? Did you did you have those?
Yeah, we had one of those kind of marriages. You know what? And I'll be truly honest. If this had happened like 5 years prior, I would have even been prepared for it or thought I deserved it. And because I had disconnected about 5 years prior to that, again, because of the nurturing, my daughter was 10, my oldest, and I just couldn't take care of her emotionally anymore. I just didn't, like, I kept pushing her away and rejecting her. It started becoming a real problem in our marriage. And that's when I went through the Dr. Phil program. So, you know, we still, the programs we run are still based on when Dr. Phil wasn't a TV personality, but did personal growth.
Oh.
And then, of course, after the affair, we started dealing more with couples and marriages and relationships and families. But prior to that, we trained with his company for 2 years in this personal growth thing. And that's when I recognized that the vows we make as young people or as children, I had actually vowed I would never love like that again. So I'd hardened my heart. And you know, one thing the scripture says about divorce is when Jesus says, it's not because of any other reason that Moses allowed divorce, and that's in Matthew 19. He talks about Moses allowed divorce because of the hardness of the heart. I didn't realize that at the age of 22 or so, I hardened my heart to nurturing because someone I thought I was going to marry died of cancer at the age of 25. I was 22.
Okay.
So I went through a year of nurturing him in sickness. And when he died, I made a vow, like an internal vow in my heart, I will never love like that again. I can't ever love like that again. So it's not that I didn't love my children. I didn't love my husband. It was that nurture emotional. So if they were sick, I'm not the one you came to. My oldest daughter still tells the story that she was, I don't know, 7 or 8 years old, and I sent her across the street to the doctor by herself. she had a cold. She kept complaining about it. And I said, look, you don't want to ride it out. The doctor's across the street. And she went on her own. She still tells the story and I'm horrified, but that sounds like me.
Mm.
It was.
But prior to that, your boyfriend at the time, you were very nurturing?
Yes,
Okay.
very,
So
very.
what do you think?
I was there.
One thing about the show, The Journey, is we really break down and get into the details of testimonies, because there's something that you can say that can free somebody else, right? There's something that you can say that where someone goes, wow, I never knew anybody else felt this way. So when you were, so before that, you get involved with this person and he gets cancer, but so you're nurturing him. So did you, when you say you made a vow, why did you make that vow? What was the point behind that?
So in the book, I really explain it because that is exactly, I don't remember making the vow. I don't remember, I remember when I went to the funeral home and had my moment with him, because he didn't have open casket. So only family and me being the girlfriend were allowed to go and visit at the funeral home with the open casket. And that is so dramatic because when I found out about Ron's affair, that God moment, had that not happened, I don't know that we could have healed. I don't know that I could have gone past it, right? I was too much in a victim role. But when God helped me, I call it the mirror moment, it's like the morning after. And the morning after I found out Ron was not home, his mom had passed away and he'd gone to spend a week with his dad. And that's when I found out. So I got a phone call saying, did you know?
Hold on, we're not going there yet. We can't go there.
Okay, you don't want me to go there yet, but that's where I found out about the vow, because that's where God showed me the vow.
Okay,
right?
But you're saying that when you saw the open casket, something what is that? What's in correlation with that?
Okay, so in correlation with that, now remember, I only saw the open casket because God took me there. I call it my It's a Wonderful Life moment where he goes back and sees it. So that was what I experienced. The vow that I made is when I looked at that open casket, though I don't remember doing it then, I remember doing it after I saw the open casket again. I had a rose in my hand and I placed it on him. And I said, I can never, ever love like this again. This hurts way too much. This hurts way too much. And I'm crying, everything everybody would do when you're saying goodbye to a loved one. And I placed that rose on his chest and said my last goodbye. But that vow, and this is what I want people to hear, is that we sometimes make eternal vows. Now, vows look like this. They're not promises. They're not fleeting things. They're deep and they go into the spirit of the man. And vows usually hold these words, I never will, or I will always. Right? So, and it usually comes from hurt. It could come from your childhood. Like I made a vow after I was sexually abused as a child that my children would never be able to spend the night anywhere except my parents, right?
Rena, stop now.
I know. It's like I can go in all kinds of directions. But
all right. Yeah, okay. We're going to go back to that.
Yes.
To finish this. You're unveiling all these things, which is all leading up to why you would shut your heart down in that position, in that place, right? So so oh my gosh. All right. Let's start right now. Let's finish out with you spoke those words over yourself when you put the rose down on his chest. And from that point forward, I mean, was that like your one true love? You never thought you'd ever meet anybody else? Okay. Yes. So how long after that did you meet Ron, your husband?
So this is going to be weird. because, you know, my whole motto is watch for God. I met Ron 3 weeks later.
Okay.
And it was at a kids' camp. I was a child evangelist at the time. And I wanted to cancel all my bookings after he died. He died in June. And so all my bookings for camps for children in the summer, I wanted to cancel them on. I went to my pastor and she goes, you can't do that. They can't find keynote speakers for children's camps.
Right.
You know, when it's starting to happen next week, you've got to go. And she goes, we'll help you. And, you know, children's pastor helped me and we put it together. And so they got me on the road, but I went there with a vengeance. There was going to be no, you know, and Ron was the worship leader.
Oh my
so
God.
That was the beginning. Then his pastor, nothing happened then except he showed an interest. And I basically said, I'm not available. You know, I mean, I was in full grief and everything else, but his pastor then came and asked me to be their youth pastor. So in the fall of that same summer, I went to be the youth pastor in his town. And that's where the relationship started.
Oh.
But I met him 3 weeks later. So had I not, again, you know, showing our walk of faith, had I gone with my emotions that were broken and not gone to that camp, what would I have missed out on, right? But I went with all my baggage too.
Right. So,
Yeah.
I mean, and also too, you were very vulnerable at the time.
Yes.
So you were vulnerable, but you were also a little angry, I'm sure.
Yes.
Because
Very.
something was taken from you. And so probably not the best time to meet somebody. So how, because you hadn't even healed yourself. So
That's true.
when you guys started dating, how much time was between the time you met him and the time you actually started dating?
I would say 2-3 months.
Okay. So, but still.
But technically, you know what, when I saw the interest in dating, I pushed it away and I said, he was younger than I was. I just looked at him. So you can't technically say we started dating. When I saw the interest and I saw, you know, first time he tried to kiss me, I just went, wait, hold it. I said, I just want you to know I don't date. That was the other decision I'd made. I will never date again. So God, until there's a husband out there for me, that's it. So I scared him. Could you imagine saying that to somebody? You know, and I did. The minute he tried to kiss me, I just went, wait, unless you're going to be my husband, not interested. And he just went, whoa, okay. You know, and so he took off, like he left. He ran, and that lasted. So that was in the fall. And then at Christmas, he asked me to marry him without the dating.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he said, okay, I can't live without you. He went 3 months trying to date other girls. He even went back to his old girlfriend. Remember, I'm still the youth pastor though, but I went home for Christmas. And while I was gone, he couldn't take it. And so I got back from Christmas and he took me out for dinner and says, will you marry me? And I went, shouldn't we date? He goes, what? Should we get to know each other? Anyway, then we were married in August of the following year. So we'd basically known each other a year.
Wow.
Okay. It was funny though. It was funny because I go, don't you think we should date and get to know each other? Like, he goes, what?
Yeah, it's like, make up your mind, woman.
Yeah, exactly. And that was basically how our marriage looked for the rest of it. What? Didn't you just say?
Right. So, all right. So, I mean, if you really think about it, you were not healed in your heart from the situation that happened with the boyfriend. So going right into a relationship where you've got to open up that place in your heart, it just wasn't going to happen. And did you think about that? Were you hoping that it would open up? I didn't.
You know what? It was we knew God was in it. We even tried to break up after we were engaged, and we knew it wasn't right. God wasn't in it, and the miracles he did to show us that. So I didn't think about it, but I operate. See, that's the thing about vows. You operate, they control. The vow controls, even if you don't know you've made the vow. And that's why that heart search, if I can say anything about healing marriages, it is forget the marriage part, forget the relationship, right? Stop questioning that. Begin to see what you brought to the marriage that is causing the division, the heart, what Jesus talked about, the hardness of heart. When I asked God to show me the hardness of my heart, and I saw that scripture and I started taking responsibility, and Ron started taking responsibility. Where did all this start? Well, it did start before we even met. It started with that vow.
Yes.
But neither one of us knew. I didn't know I was operating from it until God showed me. And if those vows aren't broken, if you go in and you've experienced or you saw your parents fighting in a certain way, you're going to avoid that. So then, in your marriage, you're going to say, whoa, he just raised his voice. When my dad raised his voice, you don't know that's what's happening inside. Right. You just go automatic to the safety feature, which is avoid, right? Yeah. So for us in the workshops that we do, that's exactly what we help you uncover is if this isn't based on truth, if this nurturing thing, which had already come out with my kid, that I wasn't nurturing her anymore. Yeah, I nurtured her when she was a baby. I nurtured her when she was a child. But once you can put on your own shoes, don't ask me for help, right? That's not normal. A child should be able to ask you for help at any age, right?
So I have to stop you because we're out of time.
Oh, okay.
This was going to happen. Oh my gosh, so fast. Well, ladies and gentlemen, please watch next week as we go into part 2 of this story. I've been holding the affair part because that is going to be a show in itself, but I had to get this background, and we're not done with the background yet. We're going back to that abuse too, because that's the little thing you just kind of threw out there. So during this time, between now and the next show, please think of other things so you don't just throw me for a loop again, because I'm sure there's lots of little things that we can talk about that all lead up to the hardness of a heart. It wasn't just that man, it was other things that led up to it. And so I'm just so thankful to have you on the show, Tina. You're amazing. And
am I allowed to say they can get this on Amazon?
Yes, absolutely. And we're going to put that in all the credits and stuff and let people know where to go get it. But definitely the book that she wrote about this situation with the affair is called How God Used the Other Woman, which is a very interesting title. So go check that out on Amazon. But we will see you next week on The Journey. Thank you so much for watching. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Joanne. Thank you.